This is the Good Government Show.
You know, the Freshwater Institute is something that has a local take in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, but it has a global scale opportunity. That river that runs through us, the Cuyahoga River that once burned and runs right through our national park, is now becoming delisted as an area of concern. That's an EPA qualification that we're working toward, and we will get it. And we like to tell our story that we came back. So I was inspired by that very mayor. I met him when I was a student in graduate school, had a cup of coffee with him, and he said, you know, change comes in inches. And that always motivated me to run, you know, to make change happen faster. The Great Lakes, if it was an economy unto itself, marked by GDP, is the third largest economy in the world. Well, listen, Cleveland is known for its great ethnicities. You know, we are 140 different ethnic communities in this mosaic that is Cleveland.
Here's something I didn't know. 90% of the fresh water in the U.S. comes from the Great Lakes. 90%. I met Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne at the Great Lakes Counties Forum at the recent National Association of Counties Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. We talked clean water, lakes, and intergovernmental cooperation. Welcome to the Good Government Show. I'm Dave Martin. On this episode, we're going to hear about the Great Lakes and a new way government is working to ensure the Great Lakes remains a vital waterway hub for clean drinking water and for the economic engine it is. So this is my conversation with Chris Ronayne in Cuyahoga County. This is Cleveland. So here's a stat for you. There are 8.8 million direct maritime jobs on the Great Lakes. Overall, there are some 100 million jobs in the entire Great Lakes region. The purpose of this forum was to create a caucus of county commissioners and county executives to protect and plan for the future of the entire Great Lakes region. While this group of county executives represents American counties, they're working across the border and with similar organizations, including the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Initiative. If you haven't listened to my episode with Mayor Gino Moretti from Canada, go back, listen, and then come back. Or listen right after this. Either way, listen. Mayor Gino heads the international group of mayors on both sides of the border. So here it is. Good government and cooperation between the U.S. and Canada. Another reason why Canada is not only a good neighbor, but our closest ally. Chris Ronayne explained where the money goes and how this is indeed money well spent. Good government in action. And listen to how small programs are working for kids growing up along Lake Erie. We recorded this during spring training, so we had to talk baseball and the Cleveland Guardians. And since he's a hockey coach, we talked ice hockey, what it's like to play hockey on a Great Lake. So coming up, Cuyahoga County Executive Chris Ronayne. AI isn't the future of government, it's happening now. Let Polimorphic power your government with AI like other agencies are already doing. Polimorphic helps you power resident-first service to streamline requests while reducing staff workloads and speeding up how your citizens get answers. It's a secure system that's built for government. You'll see immediate results with more informed citizens. Want to see how AI can help you power a service-first government? Visit polymorphic.com. That's polymorphic.com. Welcome to the Good Government Show, the voice of public service. I am happy to have with me Chris Ronayne. No, did I get it right? Chris Ronayne.
Right. Yeah,
Chris Ronayne, first time. All right, good. And you are the county executive of Cuyahoga County, which is Cleveland, Ohio.
That's right, David. 1.2 million people on the Great Lake Erie.
Yes.
Our hub city is Cleveland, as you said. We're one of 88 counties in Ohio, 2 under which have county executive systems, to which I'm the county executive for Cuyahoga County.
Okay.
My counterpart in Summit County also has a county executive. The rest have county commissioners throughout the other 86 counties of Ohio.
All right, we're going to get to good government in a minute, but first let's start off. We are recording this early in March. Spring training is happening. How are you feeling about the Guardian season?
Tell you what, the Guardians over and over exceed expectations. So I've learned never to lower expectation about the beloved Guardians. And I know to your listeners in New York, we had quite a run right to the ALCS. But I'll tell you, this team, they're a fun team to watch. They're a lovable team. They're good guys. They got a great manager in Stephen Vogt. So I never, ever count them out.
It's a great sports town.
It's a great sports town. Obviously, we've got the now currently in March first place Cleveland Cavaliers. We hope we stay that way through June.
All right.
We've got our Browns. There's always next year. And
always next year for the Browns.
We've even got for hockey fans a AHL hockey team, the Cleveland Monsters. I'm a hockey player and a hockey fan. So we got 4 major sports teams, all right there proximate to the downtown and on Lake Erie.
So you have Major League sport in everything but hockey. Where's your NHL team?
You know what? If I could wave the wand and talk to the commissioner, I'd have an NHL team in town. I think we're ripe and ready. As a youth hockey coach in my, the fun side of my life.
You still coach youth hockey?
I coached right up through the campaign 2 years ago, and my kids, who both of my coached respectively, they're now in high school, so they went above my pay grade. But as a hockey coach, we've got an incredible base of hockey fans and hockey families in Cleveland. I think we're ready for the next NHL expansion. We used to have one. They were called the Cleveland Barons, but we lost them back in the 70s, and we're still fighting back for a team.
Have you ever played hockey on a frozen Great Lake?
Of course, pond hockey. This is where I get to say the when I was a boy story. But I used to play before and after school. The before was the impressive part. We'd actually take our skates to school. We'd put them in our lockers, and we'd play before and after school on a little pond in Cahoon Park, right in front of my middle school back when.
Have you played on a Great Lake though?
Oh yeah. We've been
on Lake Erie. As it freezes over enough, you can play.
Inner edge of Lake Erie when I was a kid, we'd play right off what was otherwise a sandy beach and freeze over. But yeah, you could. I haven't done that in a while, but in the 70s, you could play right on the Lake Erie shoreline. And I played a lot of pond hockey in town.
This is the Good Government Show, so we have to get to government. We could talk sports all day, but we need beers for that. We are here at the National Association of Counties, and you just had a pre-caucus forum discussion about forming a Great Lakes forum, an advocate for fresh water and all things in the Great Lakes, cleaning it up and making sure it stays clean. And first you started off talking about something called the Fresh Water Initiative. Tell me what this is. This is something you started. This is really exciting. What's the project here?
The Freshwater Institute is something that has a local take in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, but it has a global scale opportunity. The local take is really righting the wrongs of our past. We, as a city, have some who are old enough to remember this will remember this. We have a city that tragically had a river burn.
Right.
The river that runs through us in our
Lake
county
Erie caught fire.
It was Cuyahoga River, actually. And it was the 13th time that a mayor, Carl Stokes, who I was lucky to meet as a young student, he was the first African-American mayor of a major American city. He stood up in 1969 and he said, no more. Never going to be another river fire in our town. He went to Washington with his brother, Lewis Stokes, who was the first African-American congressman from Ohio. The two of them worked on the Clean Water Act, and ultimately that Clean Water Act helped lead to the EPA. I mean, that is really roots, right? Roots in Cleveland. Yeah. So I often claim, hey, we're one of the freshwater capitals out there because this is a story of return. This river that burned 55 years ago in Cleveland has now returned to a place where the aquatic life is there. We've got migratory birds like the great blue heron coming back into our Cuyahoga River Valley. We've got a national park that goes back to President Gerald Ford, who signed the legislation to create a national park, and that's the Cuyahoga National Park. So that river that runs through us, the Cuyahoga River that once burned and runs right through our national park, is now becoming delisted as an area of concern. That's an EPA qualification that we're working toward, and we will get it. And we like to tell our story that we came back. So the Freshwater Institute was born out of that story. We wanted kids to know that story. We started an education program for our kids. They're working on the river today. They're in classrooms on the weekends learning more about the river. But it's also about the big picture stuff, education being the foremost building block, but also the research about the Great Lakes, the advocacy for the Great Lakes, the economic development leverage potential of the Great Lakes. The advocacy we're very concerned about in our region. Everything from what we're putting and what we're seeing go into the lake, microplastics and a lot of point source pollutants that's created, unfortunately, like the city of Toledo had unfortunately encountered a shutdown of their fresh water system because the algal bloom.
Where does Cleveland get their water from?
We get ours from, obviously Lake Erie itself is where we process the water, but we have got a much cleaner situation today, but we still have the threats of everything from invasive species in our Great Lakes, microplastics in our Great Lakes, and a big threat today is this concern about diversion of the water supply. Will we see in the future that 21% of the world's fresh water supply, 90% of the U.S. domestic water supply comes from the Great Lakes?
Wait a minute. Slow down. Yeah. 90% of the U.S. water comes from the Great Lakes.
That's right.
90% of the drinking water in the United States comes from the Great Lakes.
You got it.
How big an area are we talking about here?
We are talking about, and by the way, that's 90% of the fresh surface water comes from the Great Lakes.
Okay.
We are talking an area that is some 4,500 linear miles around the lakes. Is
this the entire Midwest, the Northeast, the South?
Yeah, we're talking about from Minnesota to the north, dip down to Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, the 8 Great Lakes states. And then, of course, our Canadian partners in Ontario and Quebec share this shoreline. I have an interesting job as a county exec. My Cuyahoga County has a maritime border with Canada. And I always say I really represent the totality of a county, like every other Lakeline county. I've got more fish than people in my county. They just don't vote.
You mentioned something, and fish is one of the things I wanted to ask about. There is an invasive species of fish. I think it's Asian carp.
That's right.
If I'm not mistaken.
Carp.
And what's being done to keep them out?
This is through the Port Association's collaborative that we have, and that is, you mentioned Asian carp. We've got zebra mussels that actually cling on through the ballast water of the ships that are coming through, the Laker ships that have, they've been at other places through the Atlantic and everything else. And we have, of the roughly, well, let's just say 30 or 40 of our fishes are actually invasive, if you will. And that really affects the aquatic food chain. It's just like invasive plants that eat up other plants, right? So what's being done about it is through the ports and through this Freshwater Institute, we're going to be lobbying and actively working to change the game. One example, the ports themselves have self-cleaning systems within the Laker ships in the ballast water.
Okay.
It's actually cleaning out these zebra mussels in the ballast water. So you, through technology, can get a better outcome for the ecology of the Great Lakes. We say at the end of the day, the third tranche of the Freshwater Institute, education, advocacy, economic development. There's 8.8 million direct maritime jobs on the Great Lakes. If you fan that out in terms of jobs overall, the entirety of the 8 Great Lakes states, you've got upwards of 100 million jobs in the Great Lakes states. And you've got an incredible number of people that are living in the Great Lakes states. And you've got a huge freshwater supply going out to, again, 90% of the domestic water supply.
So were you just taking a shower and went, I got a great idea? How did this come to you?
A couple of things. I mentioned that story of our mayor who said no more. And there was a public leader. This is a good government
Well, that was
show.
back in 1969.
There was a public leader who said, I'm tired of seeing our city on Time Magazine as a place of industrial spoil. We can do better. So I was inspired by that very mayor. I met him when I was a student in graduate school, had a cup of coffee with him, and he said, change comes in inches. And that always motivated me. It motivated me to run, to make change happen faster. But what you saw here at the National Association of County Officials is we're not alone. There's 81 shoreline counties from New York to Minnesota that have the same issues. And you asked about the inspiration. The other two things I referenced in today's conference here is that, one, we have other places in the world that are doing a good job of stewardship. So my wife and I, she was with the Botanical Gardens, and I was on a trip with her to Costa Rica. She ran the Cleveland Botanical Gardens. I was the +1 in the trip down there. And when I went down there...
Good +1 to be on.
Yeah, it was a great place to be. But she and I observed kids in Costa Rica were the tour guides in the rainforest. They understood what they had, and the fact that they were touring adults about the place that they were in means they're the future stewards and ambassadors of the place, and probably the future public leaders. I liked that. And then I was up in our estates. I was up at Glacier National Park. In Glacier National Park, same thing. There were kids giving tours about what's happening. I asked a woman on one of these biodiesel fueled buses. I said, what do you do here? And she says, we tell people about what's happening to us. And they become the stewards of a place, right? So at the Great Lakes, we want our students to be the true stewards and champions of the Great Lakes, such that they're in the future in the hallowed halls of Congress, or they're the next county executive or commissioner, or they're the next council member, or they're the next Carl Stokes who saves the day because they cared enough and knew enough that we got liquid gold in front of us, and we got the world's greatest really treasure in our own health and ecosystem, and that's fresh water.
Are the Great Lakes under under assault? Do they have problems, or is this just an effort to make sure that they don't in the future?
There's some great framework for action. I mean, the Great Lakes governors and provincial leaders are organized as a group. There's also a Great Lakes cities, which is Canadian and U.S. and St. Lawrence Seaway communities. They're already organized. The reason I wanted to organize the counties is we're kind of the tweener between cities and states.
Right.
And we didn't have representation on this. So we got a framework for action with these kind of groups that are forming to protect what they have. You asked, though, is there something happening? It's not as if it's happening in a big bang way. It's the death of 1,000 cuts. It's the microplastics that are just finding their way into our water streams. It's a little bit of diversion from one city outside the watershed that we're piping water now into. Where does that end, right? And I think what we have got to have is ultimately, I think there needs to be a national blueprint about the Great Lakes and where we're going with the stewardship responsibility of these fresh waters, and work with our Canadian partners across the maritime line because they have an equal stake in this.
You mentioned this organization, and I believe I talked with a member of the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Cities Institute.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
And it was our first international mayor that we had
That's
on the program. He was from Canada. He told me a little bit about this.
Yeah.
What's the working relationship, and what is the interdependence of the working relationship between the Canadian provinces and the Canadian cities and the U.S. counties and cities and states?
I was lucky to have a ringside view of the formation of the Great Lakes Cities Initiative because it was Mayor Richard Daley from Chicago and Mayor David Miller from Toronto that put that together. I staffed it from Cleveland, Ohio when I was a young staffer with the mayor. I was planning director for her, and had that ringside view. What I saw with this Great Lakes Cities Initiative, they actually made change. They came together to create what is today the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, the GLRI. The Great Lakes Restoration Act is what they created. And I always say it's bipartisan. Out of Ohio, we had then Senator Mike DeWine, today's governor of Ohio, working on it. We had then Congressman Stephen LaTourette working with then Congressman Rahm Emanuel from Chicago. We know Rahm Emanuel from the Obama administration. Democrats, Republicans working together on the common ground of fresh water, right? And so that Great Lakes Cities Initiative birthed that Great Lakes Restoration Act, which poured millions, hundreds of millions into our shoreline counties over the next decade and a half.
So you spent $250,000 of the county's money on the Freshwater Institute. Is this a good use of your tax
100%.
dollars at work?
I'm here today at my side off air. Here's Emily Baca, who's our first director of the Freshwater Institute. Here's some of the ways in which we spent actually your federal tax dollars, because we were able to get an earmark from Congresswoman Chantel Brown, $500,000, going a long way. It is teaching kids, as we said, about what the water is all about in front of them. They're paying it forward by working our river and actually cleaning it up so that the Laker ships can get through and such that rowers and kayakers and everybody else can have a great experience. The thing about that Cleveland story...
You've got kids on the water that are cleaning it up.
Working and cleaning it up. And the thing about that Cleveland story is, in the ecosystem of the Great Lakes, we're all connected, right?
Sure.
So we've got you connected through all those Great Lakes states. So we're really paying it forward to everybody. I would say in our local application, we're also getting kids swim ready, because if they're going to be water stewards, they got to be in the water, right? We have too many drownings. We have way too many drownings in our community, and so getting kids swim ready such that they can be water accessible is a good thing. That's just the baby steps. The big quantum leaps are about how do we leverage this huge water supply for economic development and blue economy jobs, right? That's what we talk about in Northeast Ohio. But what I heard today at this forum, from Minnesota to Wisconsin, all the way out to New York, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan in between, what I heard from them, all the same. Huge tourism and recreation dollars, huge economic development opportunities. If you work with the ports, the American economy can grow even more. You know that, a little fun fact here, the Great Lakes, if it was an economy unto itself, marked by GDP, is the third largest economy in the world.
The Great Lakes.
It's the United States, Japan, and then taken away from that United States is the Great Lakes of Canada and the U.S. Great Lakes states. We are number 3 behind the U.S. itself, Canada, and then it's us, the Great Lakes. Huge unknown, I think, out there in the hinterlands, that this place matters.
How vital is the Canadian input and the Canadian partnership in this project?
I mean, we're tied at the hip, right? We are connected on a maritime line, which is just an imaginary geopolitical line. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that geopolitical line obviously has meaning and value to us, but nature doesn't know it, right? So what I guess I'm saying is, I mean, what happens to one fish?
The water doesn't know, except the fish don't know.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're vital. Obviously, they're vital. Look, for the water quality itself, it takes two to tango on this one. We've got to be each other's best friend on this. So, from Canada to the U.S., water quality standards matter. But also, we can work together on I'll give you an example. The St. Lawrence Seaway, we share lock systems between U.S. locks and Canadian locks. We have got to work together to potentially open those locks 12 months out of the year. We right now are open about 9 months out of the year, but I've been talking to anybody who will listen in our Senate and House delegation to say, hey, let's talk to the provincial leaders of Canada. If we together work together to open up the Canadian locks 12 months out of the year, you're going to see an explosion of port activity out of the Great Lakes from both the Canadian and the U.S. side.
Are you optimistic that the Great Lakes are in good shape?
I think that we've got to keep our guard up. I think we got to watch our flank. I think that there's this, again, it's not a big bang problem. It's this death of 1,000 cuts. But if we get together, this isn't cities against rural areas. This isn't farmers against urbanites. This is all of us. We might do a better job of creating a better nutrient system as we fertilize our crops. There are better products in the supply chain today that we can use such that we don't see a point source pollutant that creates the algal bloom that creates toxicity in the water. That's on the farming side. But also on the urban runoff side, a huge contributor to the degradation of the lake quality is urban runoff. So you got to watch our flank. All of us have to work together to say we can do better on preserving this pristine freshwater supply. A little bit further up your way, up in the New England states and Northeast, Lake Champlain learned the hard way. They did too much, there's too much roadway runoff into Lake Champlain. They spoiled a pretty great lake up there itself in Lake Champlain, one of the other contributors to fresh surface water.
Yeah.
But the reality is this is within us, people, to create better technology systems, to create better nutrient enrichment systems, to create better ways to catch invasive species. That's on the ecology side, but it's also within us to leverage the growth of the Great Lakes. I should say,
and there's no one but government who can do this, right?
I think it's all of us. I think it's binational, it's multi-state, it's the U.S. government, it's the state governments, it's the county governments, and it's the city. So the reason I put the county group together here with National Association of County Officials, or we're trying to put it together with them, is the reality is the county's been a missing piece in this. And the counties in good government, we represent all. We represent cities, townships, rural farming communities.
But this is a government problem to solve. There's no one else who can solve this.
I think this is a place where the public sector has to lead. The public sector has to lead through, the right incentives, the right regulations, some mix in between of both. But it's also a time to say to our companies, you can join this party too. And you know what? Just like nature knows no fixed boundaries between the waterways, human health knows only human health. We got to help save ourselves, right?
But you've got governors involved through the Great Lakes and St. Lawrence Governors Association. You've got the cities involved with the Cities Institute. You've got the Freshwater Initiative from your city and your county. That's a government solution to a government problem, isn't it?
And again, this is a public good, right? And in a public good, just like fresh air, you got to create public entities that put the wraparound guardrails on what you can do to the public good. And again, this is the thing I love about this freshwater initiative and our institute back home, but what we're doing at NACO with the Great Lakes Caucus. What I love about this is, who's not for fresh water? There isn't anybody that says, gee, let me ingest some dirty water, right? So we're all in this together, and we're literally in this together. And across political boundaries, across national borders, across everything, we're in this together.
All right, that was the easy part. Coming up, we're going to get to the hard part.
All right.
So we have a Good Government Show questionnaire where we get to the heart of your true philosophy of government.
These are difficult times, and if you believe in justice, progress, and democracy, the news you read and listen to can be pretty depressing. And that's why there's a new podcast called Good News for Lefties and America. Every day it features positive news stories for progressive listeners, because no matter how disturbing the headlines might be, there's always hope we can build on for a better tomorrow. Good News for Lefties and America. Listen on this platform at goodnewsforlefties.com or wherever podcasts are heard.
So we know what you're doing with the Great Lakes and with the waterways, but now we're going to find out about government itself. Define good government. What makes it effective?
To me, good government is providing for the health, safety, and welfare of our people. It's also about a trusted, transparent entity that listens, and vis-a-vis the conduits are those who are in elected office to listen to the citizens who got them there. And ultimately, you weave in good government with good politics, and they're inextricably linked. It's ultimately about the art of the possible. What the people say they want to see done in a transparent government that listens, we can do great things together. So I think that good government ultimately is about delivering on the promise of why you're here, meaning what you were elected for and what you said, and do what you said you were going to do.
If people don't like what they see and they don't like what they hear, or they're frustrated by you and people like you, county executives and elected leaders, what should they do?
Well, I personally still think, and I say this to students in sort of public affairs programs at the university level and high school history and civics programs, I say that government is still a noble pursuit. If you're in it for the right reasons, if you're in it for the reasons of entrusting or people entrusting you to do the business as they voted you to do, if you're in it for the right reasons, we got a partnership. Again, there's bad apples in every sector of our working world.
Yes.
That sometimes spoil the bunch, and because of those bad apples, there's an understandable rhetoric sometimes that's anti-government, but I do think at the end of the day, good government is about people living up to the expectations that they were voted for and remaining true to that.
We are the voice of public service. What drew you to public service?
Mine does go back to that experience with the former mayor of Cleveland when I was a student and I stopped him in an aisle at a class I was in a college lecture that he was a guest lecturer to. I said, would you take a few minutes with the student and have coffee? That was me and that was him.
Wow.
He said, I'll see you on Saturday. That was a weeknight that same week, and he had coffee with me that weekend. He said to me, this is Carl Stokes, the first African-American mayor of a major city. Carl Stokes said, change comes in inches. It fueled me because it both haunted me and motivated me. It's true. Change isn't coming at the speed we need in this country, in the states, and in our cities, but it's also a change that I think comes at the speed of trust, And I felt motivated by that opportunity to learn from a great mayor over a simple 30-minute cup of coffee with Carl Stokes.
Other than Mayor Stokes, who else inspires you?
Well, I tell you, I'm a child of small business owners. My mother and my father inspired me. I have a great respect for our small businesses. In our county, we've got some 30,000 small businesses. That's really the engine that makes our county economy go. So I would say that private independent businesses and owners like my parents have also inspired me. I think a third thing for me is I got a lucky break when I was an undergraduate in school, and I studied abroad. I studied how cities worked, and I studied how government worked. I was at the ringside view of the formation of the EU back when in Europe, and got to understand how regional governments work and COGS worked. And so all of that motivated me. So again, those early mentors, if you're lucky, parents who kind of guide you in the right direction. And in my case,
whether you want them to or not,
right, seeing the rest of the world and bringing some ideas home. But I will say now, as an elected office holder, what motivates me every day are the people who do other work in our county, be it small business owners, be it nonprofit directors. That kind of mission that's out there with the many organizations I work with, they fuel me, because we have learned, if you're good at this in government, you'll learn you don't get anywhere alone. It's a team. It's a real team sport in good government.
This is your second term, I believe, as you're in your second term as county executive?
Third year of the first term, but I did announce I'm running for re-election.
Oh, you're ready to go. All right. What have you learned about government from the inside that you wish people knew?
Well, that you have trusted partners on the outside. I often say in Cleveland, Ohio, we have the greatest public-private nonprofit partnership in the land. I think sometimes nonprofits get left off of that public-private partnership, those P3s we talk about. It's really kind of a P4, right? It's the nonprofits as well. The reason I say that is because what does a county do? It's in the business of human services, justice affairs, infrastructure, and economic development. But there's a heavy emphasis on that human services and justice affairs, which means you're dealing with people, which means you can't be meeting people at every corner where they're at all the time on every street. You've got nonprofit intermediaries who are doing that with you. And if you properly deputize that army of people who are at the front line with you, you can get great things done. So what I learned on the inside is that if you look to the outside, you can get more done together, inside and out, working together on the front line.
Two-part question. What's the best part of the job? What's the thing that keeps you up at night?
Well, we just cut a ribbon on a county dog kennel training center, and I was with puppies all Friday. That was fun.
All right.
So
okay.
that was I'll say a great day,
okay.
with some puppies. But honestly, the best side is for me, my staff, my team, seeing that people are in this noble profession not for the money, because you don't necessarily go to government.
You're not here for all the money?
No, and that's the 4,500 women and men I work with that really inspire me every day. The downside are in county government, it's a tough beat. In a county government, we take care of those who need us most, who often have for the moment the least. They may be not necessarily poor in spirit, but the economics aren't good for people. And I've had kids that are homeless in my community that we've had to provide shelter first and foremost, and then foster care and adoption services. You see people in a situation in their life that has gotten through no fault sometimes of their own. These are kids that end up in a place that they're in real danger. And so the human service side can be uplifting, but it can also be a real eye-opener in terms of the plight of some human beings who many got to some place that they didn't even cause, especially when you're dealing with kids.
So after a young teenage you met the mayor, did you decide you were going to be the next mayor or the president?
I had the good fortune after going to graduate school of getting hired by a mayor.
Okay.
I was a successor to that mayor. Her name
so
was
this
Jane
is something
Campbell.
you always saw yourself getting into?
Yeah, I actually went out after graduate school. I was a city planner by background. I went and worked for the County Planning Commission, which counties across the country have county planning commissions. I worked in one of them in Northeast Ohio. But I was walking across the street one day to a meeting at Cleveland City Hall, to a meeting with the mayor, and I thought I was going to a meeting about the census. And I got to the stairs of City Hall, and a councilman came out. He said, "You know what? Mayor White's not running again." So I called up my boss, who was a county commissioner at the time, and I said, "When you're in, I'm in." She called me back up in a couple of months. She said, "Would you run my campaign?" So I ran an all-city race at 29 years old with Mayor Jane Campbell. We won, and good things happened from there. And so I sort of got baptism by fire in public service, running a campaign and then serving on the mayor's cabinet.
Let's talk about Cleveland.
Yeah.
I haven't been there. Supposedly, I'm coming this summer for a Guards game.
Come on out and we'll go to the game together.
All right, we'll do that now. But what's the one thing I have to try when I'm in Cleveland? What's the signature dish of Cleveland?
I was tempted out of Brooklyn to ask you, are you a Yankees fan or a Mets fan? Neither or all of you.
Yankees all the way.
All right, there you go. So this will be the Guards guy with the Yankees fan together in the
That's
seats,
right. Yep.
Well, listen, Cleveland is known for its great ethnicities. We are 140 different ethnic communities in this mosaic. That
Chef Boyardee.
So Chef Boyardee, it's funny you say that. We've got family that way back when actually worked with Boyardee, and he was one of the great chefs. And by the way, Cleveland is a culinary capital. So let me give you, on top of the great meatballs of Chef Boyardee, which that's a great take. Many people don't know that.
Yes.
You got to try the pierogies. I mean, shout out to my friends in Parma, Ohio. It's the 7th largest city in Ohio. It happens to be in Cuyahoga County. Pierogies are unparalleled in Cleveland, Ohio. The second thing you got to try is Slimans. That's corned beef. Many presidents have been through the little joint on St. Clair that's Slimans, and it's a wonderful, wonderful experience. Again, our ethnic food is everything to sink your teeth into, and I'd say pierogies and corned beef to start with. The paszkis are pretty good this time of year, too. In our Polish community.
All right. Do you get out on the lake? Do you get out on the Great Lakes for fun?
I got a little dinghy I get out on
and
try to fish once in a while and just have a lot of fun on the Great Lakes. It is a whole different perspective when you're looking back at your city from the water. It just gives you a whole new framework. And I sometimes just need the downtime to get out of the water. Yeah.
This is the Good Government Show. We always bring it back to good government. Tell me about a project that you've been doing just as county executive for Cuyahoga County in Cleveland. What's something you're happy you're proud of?
We've got a few. A politician can never give you one answer, right? So let me give you a couple.
Sometimes they do.
No, I was really proud.
Not usually.
Last year we opened up a welcome center that is important to us. I mentioned those 140 different ethnic communities. Wherever people are coming from, we have a place where people can find out basically how to navigate the town. They're coming from other places, sometimes other countries. And you know what? For us in Cleveland, that's who we are. So we're proud of that welcome center that we opened up. I also opened up a wellness center for kids. The plight I told you about kids that have come homeless to us. Counties are the guardians for kids in lieu of others. And so we've had kids dropped off at our doors. And I said, we need something better. So we started a new child wellness center where kids will get the specialists they need, the health care they need, the education they need. Those are two things I'm very, very proud of. But the other one is this Freshwater Institute. I know you said one, here's three, but the Freshwater Institute is really going to change the game on where we're going as a freshwater culture and as a Great Lakes basin. I said today, say it again on your show, third largest economy in the world is these Great Lakes. So that Freshwater Institute that's here to steward the freshwater, advocate for it, research best practices on it, and create jobs out of it. The blue economy matters in these Great Lakes states.
And you haven't spent that much money putting this together.
No, we have not. Yeah, that's funny. I appreciate you saying that because we think the return far outweighs the cost.
Chris Ronayne, the Cuyahoga County Executive. Chris Ronayne, I said it right the second time?
You got it.
All right, good. Chris Ronayne, the Cuyahoga County Executive. Good luck with the Freshwater Initiative. It definitely sounds like good government, and with your Canadian partners and your interstate partners and your intercity councils and your county councils, this is a really great example of good government in action. Everybody working together, trying to make sure that the Great Lakes stay clean and fresh.
It's about all of us. It's great to be on the Good Government Show. Keep a good thing going.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
After you get done with this episode, hear more good government stories with our friends at How to Really Run a City. Former mayors Kasim Reed of Atlanta and Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, and their co-host, journalist and author Larry Platt, talk with guests and other mayors about how to really get stuff done in cities around the nation. Check them out where you're listening now or through their nonprofit news site, thephiladelphiacitizen.org/podcasts. Yeah, sure, we have a border between the U.S. and Canada, but the water doesn't know it. And as Chris Ronayne pointed out, to keep the water clean, he said, well, it takes two to tango. The third largest economy in the world. That, he said, is the combined U.S.-Canada Great Lakes economy, which includes 8 states. That's big. As Chris said, this is something we all need to stay aware of. Another example here on the Good Government Show about international cooperation. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening to another example of how government does work for all of us. Please like us and share us with your friends and review us right here where you're listening. And check out our website, goodgovernmentshow.com, for extras. Help us keep telling stories of good government in action everywhere. Join us again for another episode right here. I'm Dave Martin, and this is the Good Government Show. The Good Government Show is a Valley Park production. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are the executive producers. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic. Please subscribe, then share us, and like us and review us. That's the best way to make sure we're able to keep telling these stories of our government working for all of us. Then listen to the next episode of The Good Government Show.